Hey, how's it? Today we are speaking about budget scopes. Now for those of you that know me or that watched some of my videos before, you know that I'm a massive hawk fan. My competition rifle has got a hawk sidewinder on it, and I fundamentally believe that that's the best value for money. However, I've got many customers that come to the range and says, listen, I've just spent 7,000 Rand on a rifle or 15,000 Rand on a rifle, and I honestly don't want to spend that kind of money or more money than what I spent on my rifle on a scope. Now, even though that's a very fair statement to make, I've seen some guys come to the range with a 30,000 Rand rifle, a 3,000 Rand scope, and have a very cock day at the range. I've also seen people come to the range with a 7,000 Rand rifle, a 15,000 Rand scope, and having a magnificent day at the range. So at the end of the day, the scope that you put on your rifle is going to affect your accuracy and it's going to affect your experience on the range. But be that as it may, I phoned my friend Ian at SA Air Rifles and Accessories and I said, listen mate, I've got some customers here that don't want to spend 10, 15,000 Rand on a scope. What is your recommendations? And he sent me two recommendations. Firstly, he sent me the Marcool that you can see at the bottom here, and he also sent me the Vector Optics. So in this video, we are going to compare these two budget scopes and let's understand what features they offer us. So the first scope that we're going to look at is the Marcool. Now at the time of recording this video, this scope is a 2,500 Rand scope. So what comes in the box? Well, quite a rough, durable looking scope. I mean, it's quite pretty if I look at it. Comes with a sight parallax. It comes with a sunshade. It comes with a throw over lever. Obviously you have to have one of those. You need to put it on as quickly as possible. It comes with a nice branded cloth, and it also comes with its instruction manuals. Now, a couple of things that I can say about the scope. Let's just firstly speak about the warranty. So this scope has got a 2-year warranty. Obviously on condition that you don't drop the scope and do something crazy with it, but it comes with a 2-year warranty. So what are some of the things that I enjoy about the scope? Well, the first thing is obviously the crystal clear lenses. So for me, that's a magnificent feature of this scope. Unfortunately for me, that's sort of where the journey ends. If I look at the rest of the scope, the first thing here is if I want to adjust the elevation, I found this to be extremely difficult to do. I've even taken off this cap on the top, put some silicone spray in there and just popped it back down, but still I can't get this to just pop off, adjust and pop back, which is it's quite a high-end feature, but I think they should have saved the money on that feature and just made this easier to adjust. If I compare that, for example, with the windage, it's so much easier to do. It's also very nice in how you experience that adjustment. Now, if I look at the parallax, for me, the parallax was a little bit sticky. So, I actually struggled quite a few times to get the parallax perfect for my eye. And then the last thing is that this has actually got quite thick crosshairs, and because it's a second focal plane, those crosshairs stay prominent throughout your shooting experience. Doesn't matter if you're shooting at 15 or 50, you've got these very thick crosshairs. Now, what is the methodology that I used in order to test these scopes? And it's quite a consistent methodology throughout all the scopes that I test. So the first thing that we do is we mount the scope on a rifle. So in this specific case, I mounted it on the Avenger or the Leviathan in order to get an understanding of exactly where we're shooting. So you would have noticed in adjusting this scope, I struggled quite a bit with the parallax, and you'll see that in the video in just a second. Now, speaking about the video, I wanted, or I had no intention of keeping the sound in the video, but unfortunately you can't get the full experience without the sound, so I apologize for the swearing, I apologize for the music, but I've decided to keep the sound in the adjustment video. So let's go and have a look at that now.
God, man.
Okay, so as you could see in that video, it was fairly easy to adjust. The only thing that I really struggled with was obviously the parallax that I mentioned, but the rest of the experience was actually quite straightforward. Now, the next test that we do is once we've configured this, as you saw in the previous video, we actually go and shoot a precision target. So this target has got a 2mm dot in the middle, and what I typically do here is I explain it in the format of hussies and dussies. So we're ultimately shooting the eye of a hussy and a dussie, and if you shoot that little 2mm dot in the middle, it means that you've shot out the pupil. If you shoot or touch the little black ring around that dot, it means you shot the eye out. And ultimately, if you miss those two, you've sort of shot the dussie somewhere else or the hussy somewhere else. So if I look at how we shot with this scope, we shot a 233 score with the scope, which means that in essence, we missed the pupil 17 times. At least we shot the hussy or the dussie in the eye most of the times, except for 3 times where we actually missed the eye completely, but shot the dussie or the hussy in the face. So that's really what we got with this setup. There's some other tests that we did with this as well. The first one is the box test. So the box test is very straightforward. We actually go and make an adjustment with the elevation. So we adjust 10 up, 10 right, 10 down, 10 left, and take a shot. And unfortunately, this did not succeed with that shot. The shot was quite off when we did that specific adjustment. So the other thing that we do as part of the test is I take the scope, I chuck it in my bag, I drive with my vehicle, and the next day I go back to the range and I just take the shot. Unfortunately, this failed that as well. The parallax was off, and for some odd reason the adjustment was also slightly off on the rifle itself. So what are my final thoughts on the Marcool? It's quite straightforward. I think you get exactly what you pay for. Like I mentioned, this is a 2,500 Rand scope, and if you're going to be doing some hunting at 50 meters, you will really enjoy this scope. But if you want the scope for precision shooting, it's going to frustrate the living hell out of you. So that's really my final conclusion on the Marcool scope. There's one more thing that I should actually mention. I gave this to a friend of mine at the range as well, Kevin, and I said, Kevin, what do you think about the scope? And Kevin said, man, I'm just not feeling the love. And I must be honest, that was my experience as well. So that was the Marcool, everything you need to know about that. The next scope that we had the opportunity to test was the Vector Optics. So what comes in the box of the Vector Optics is obviously this beautiful ragged scope. It comes with the end caps. I really quite like these end caps. They're rigid, they fit nicely. In comparison, obviously, if I just look at this sort of just slides off on the Marcool, but on the Vector Optics, it sits extremely, extremely nicely. So what is in the box? Firstly, I've got a set of 30mm Weaver rings. Just off the bat, I need to mention that I stripped one of the bolts on these rings with my finger. So I was tightening the bolts just slightly with my finger before they got torqued, and I stripped one of the bolts. So I would definitely not use these rings on my precision rifle. You also get a nicely branded cloth, and then your user manual or your instruction manual. Now, this Vector Optics come with a 5-year warranty. So it's a pretty decent warranty. Again, taking into consideration that you didn't throw someone with the scope, that has been cared for nicely, but if anything goes wrong, obviously that warranty, that 5-year warranty will kick in. So now let's go and have a look at this scope. What makes this different? So the first thing is, when you look at this configuration video that we're going to go through in just a second, you will see that if I look at the crosshairs, they are extremely, extremely fine. So much so that my camera actually initially struggled to pick up the crosshairs. Now, from a precision shooting perspective, that is magnificent. I mean, it's really, really nice that you've got these fine crosshairs, but in making a video, it was quite complex. So let's go and have a look at that video now.
Geef mij net een seconde. Oké, zet voor mij. Oké, daar, dit is bij mij. Oké, zet je artjes nou.
So as you saw in that video, one of the things that I really love about the configuration of this scope is if I make micro adjustments, in other words, I've set it up, and if I look again at, for example, one of these targets that have this 2mm dot in the middle, if I'm shooting a millimeter above or a millimeter below or a millimeter to the left or a millimeter to the right, and I make an adjustment on the scope, I actually want to see that crosshair move with that single adjustment. I physically want to see that happen. And with this vector optics, I could clearly see how those adjustments took place. So I could really make some micro adjustments. So if we go back to this target, we got a score of 241, which means that we only missed the pupil 9 times. And the rest of the times, we actually took out the eye. We also took the pupil out 7 times in this specific target. Now, just for context, this was literally just a swap over. I took the Marcool off, I put the vector optics on, and took the shots. I didn't make any other adjustments to the rifle. That was literally the difference. And as you can see, you know, between a 241 and a 233, it's a significant difference when it comes to precision shooting. So what do I love about this specific optic? So the first thing is, obviously I mentioned earlier on that this is a 10 by 40 adjustment. To be very, very honest, I never went beyond 18. I never needed to. You know, at an 18 on 40 meters, it was actually very, very precise. I had clarity, you know, the parallax worked perfectly. And one of the things on the parallax, now that I'm sort of diverting back to the parallax, is very, very seldom do you get a parallax that if you're shooting at, for example, 25 meters or 40 meters or 50 meters, the parallax is exact at that meterage. So for example, here, when we were shooting at 25 meters, the parallax was actually at exactly 25. And when I moved to 50 meters, the parallax was at exactly 50 meters. I also enjoy the movement on this parallax. It's extremely precise, and you can really, really, really dial it in. So much so that you know the description on this, so for example there where it says date, you can you can see that clearly at 25 and 50 meters with the adjustment of the scope itself. Then we've also got some high-end features that we spoke about. So once again, I can just go and clip out the elevation and just listen to these clicks. Oh man, it's a thing of beauty. And the same thing with the windage. So pop it out, very crisp, very, very nice in terms of its configuration. So would I recommend that someone puts this 5,000 Rand scope on their 30,000 Rand rifle? The answer to that is most definitely yes. I actually think that this is the perfect scope for 25 meters and 50 meters precision shooting. I thoroughly enjoy the scope, so much so that I told Ian you should just send me an invoice because I'm not sending this one back. I think it's a fantastic scope for the price. It's not a hawk, so let's just put it out there. It's not a sidewinder, so I'm not going to be swapping the scope of my precision or my competition rifle, but I'm definitely going to replace the scopes on my range rifles with this Sentinel X because it is a magnificent scope. And yeah, that's all we have to say about the budget scopes today. See you in the next video.